So I've told you the importance of statuses. And the importance of a status is when you're given a status, along with it comes a certain set of responsibilities, and those are the roles, expected behavior for a status. If you're given the status of a manager, of a supervisor, whatever it is, you're expected to carry out those types of behavior. You could think of a status as the noun and the roles are the verbs, right? The action word for the statuses. And that's why people will say, well, it's not me, I'm just doing my job. I'm just doing the thing that my status tells me to do. An instructor instructs, or a student studies, and so on and so forth. So think of roles as action words. Let's talk about a very famous experiment here when it comes to how our behavior is influenced. And let's talk about Dr. Solomon Asch and the Asch experiment. It was a conformity test. What he did was he surrounded a person in the experiment by people that were giving wrong answers. And he wanted to see if people would conform and fit in with the other people in the group and also give the wrong answers. So in this picture here we have a line. And let's say that the person was the fifth person. The first four people would give wrong answers. If they said, which is Exhibit 1, which line is closest to Exhibit 1, A, B, or C, the first four people would say the wrong answer. And they were trying to see if people would purposely give a wrong answer, and they found out that yes, it's true, people do give in to the pressure of the group and the conformity test. It does happen. 33% of the time, people were kind of going back and forth. 40% gave more right answers than wrong answers. Only 25% of the people always gave the right answer. And that's a very small percentage. 25% always were true to themselves. So I want you to think about, are you always being true to yourself and giving the right answer or saying what you want to say, or are you conforming to the group and what the group is saying? Always remember Dr. Solomon Asch and the conformity test. And are you saying what you really want to say, or are you going along with the group? Another individual is Dr. Stanley Milgram, and he gave the test on the authority figure. The concept is that people will do things that they don't particularly agree with, but if an authority figure tells you to do it, the responsibility is not on you. Here's a gentleman, and he's being tied up to these machines. And the person is told, if he says a wrong answer, I want you to shock him. And if people are told, hey, don't worry, it's not you. You're not the one that's shocking him. It's me, or this company, or this institution. People are more likely to shock a person simply based on the fact that the authority figure said to do it. And the responsibilities, it's not on you anymore. Here we have a story of a girl, and her name is Louise Ogburn, and what happened is there was a gentleman, and he would get on the telephone and he would call all of these different restaurants, McDonald's and Wendy's. And he said, I'm a police officer, and I need for you to conduct a strip search because we believe that the employee at the front is stealing or criminal. And because a person was on the telephone saying that they're the authority figure, they're with law enforcement, the responsibility is removed. And therefore, this girl was the victim. And by the way, this happened over and over and over again. The same individual would call several different restaurants saying he was an authority, that he was with law enforcement, and he needed that person to conduct a strip search. Now, he was doing it simply because he knew that he could get away with it. And people would go along with it because they thought, well, I'm not the one that is in charge of this. It's this guy on the phone. And it shows us the power of the authority figure and the power of, if the responsibility is not on you, then what people will go through with. If you're interested, here's some more information on the previous case of Louise Ogburn. And if you want to read up on it, it's right here. You can pause the video to read it. Now let's talk about the power of the group. And there is something called groupthink, going along with others to avoid conflict. Many times, as we've stated earlier, other people in the group will say something and maybe you don't necessarily want to do it. You don't necessarily want to go where they want to go. You don't necessarily want to eat what they want to eat, or whatever the thing is. And unfortunately, sometimes it's things that are much more harmful than what I've stated. And because the group is saying it, and I know that teenagers go through this a lot, you know, some of the group says, well, let's go to the island, and it's 1 a.m. And maybe someone in the group doesn't really want to go. It's already late. But they go along with the group and they think they're going to get in trouble. And many times they do get in trouble. But the thing about groupthink, and one thing I want you to keep in mind, and one thing I want you to learn, is that if you speak up, if you go first, chances are somebody's going to follow you. The thing is, you have to go first. And that's the thing about groups. It's very difficult to go against the entire group, even though you feel different and you know better. But many times, if you go first, somebody else will follow you. One thing I want you to keep in mind in reference to groups, the bigger the group, the less responsible people feel. People do not feel so responsible when there's a lot of people. That's why people are more likely to steal when there's a mob or break the law, because look at all of these individuals breaking the law. It's not me. I didn't start it. All of these people started it. One time I went to the movies and I saw this movie here, and the audio went out and nobody stood up. Nobody went to go tell the manager. Why? Because everyone else thought, well, somebody's going to go do it, right? Somebody's going to go tell. There were so many people, everyone thought the same thing. So nobody went to go tell the manager, and I finally stood up and I went to go tell the manager, there is no audio. We can't hear the film. By this time, we had already been sitting there for over 10 minutes. There was a story of this girl right here, and that she had been yelling because she had been sexually assaulted in her apartment complex. And she yelled for help and nobody called the police. Why didn't anybody call the police? Because everybody thought, well, someone will do it. Somebody will call the police. In actuality, nobody did call the police. This is called the bystander effect. The more people around, the less likely people will help. If you've ever seen a car that gets stuck in an intersection, let's say the car dies and it's in a four-way stop, many times, even though there's a lot of people around, people don't help. But the thing that you notice is that as soon as someone starts to help, everyone else jumps in. However, it always takes that first person to go help that person push. And once somebody goes first, everyone else will fall into line. The last definition is called de-individuation. And that's when responsibility is generated by the group, not you. When everyone else is rioting and everyone else is stealing, you don't feel responsible because responsibility is generated by the group, not you.